introduce the person of eminence, Professor Dr. K. Muthuchelian. Professor Dr. K. Muthuchelian is a world-renowned biology scientist with more than 30 years of teaching and research experience at different hierarchical levels, including professor, head and chairperson, vice chancellor. Currently, he is serving as the pro-vice chancellor at the Anand Sagar University, Bangalore. He obtained his doctoral degree from the School of Biological Sciences, Madurai Kamaraj University, Madurai, India. Subsequently, he had his postdoctoral research from University of Ancona, Italy. He has been conferred with prestigious Doctor of Science in recognition of his research accomplishment on biomass resource management and technology. He has been conferred with several fellowships from prominent foreign and Indian scientific societies, including International Energy Foundation Canada, the National Academy of Biological Sciences, Paleobotanical Society, Zoological Society of India, National Environment Study Academy, and Indian Applied Association for Microbiologists. He has guided over 81 students for research and 4 scholars for postdoctoral program, and 43 candidates have been awarded with a PhD under his supervision. In these 3 decades of research experience with more than 30 research projects with leading international and national organizations including IUCN in Switzerland, ICTP Italy, University of Reading UK, EPA USA, BSA UK, Euroscience France, Third World Network Malaysia, the World Water Council France, the Global Mountain Biodiversity Assessment Switzerland, Instituto di Agrario San Michele Taranto Italy, and Nitrogen Fixing Tree Association Hawaii USA. MAB program and National Biodiversity Authority MOEF and CC. He has published more than 220 research articles, 25 books, 42 book chapters, and more than 500 popular scientific research articles in SCI journal and magazines to attain his H index 23. Notably, he has authored 4 books of Uir Virimam, Biodiversity, the Current Status and Management in Tamil, and these books graciously was released by Honorable Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, former President of India, and His Excellency Dr. K. Roshaya, the Governor and the Chancellor Government of Tamil Nadu, widely appreciated by peace of scientists in the arena. Besides, he also involved in the steering committee in 12th State Planning Commission, Government of Tamil Nadu, and expert member in the Puducherry State Higher Education Council. He served as the chairman of NAGPIR team visits in many institutions across India and an active member for different panel and committees in UGC, DST, MNREC, MOEF, and CC. He received 40 prestigious international national awards into his academic credentials, including the first Indian science honored with the prestigious award by University of Ancona, Italy 1998, Lifetime Achievement Award in the Environmental Science, Food and Nutritional Science and Microbiology, twice the Merit of Excellence Award, Eminent Scientist Award, and Professor S. Kanayan Memorial Award. Tamil Nadu's Best Scientist in the Environmental Science by TNS-CST, the Best Scientist in the Environmental Management by Department of Environment, Government of Tamil Nadu, and he was awarded as the Best Vice Chancellor Award twice by the Indian Red Cross Society Tamil Nadu, and consequently awarded with Best Tamil Book in 2014 for Uir Virimam, and in 2015 for Nulagam Arivalagu Nulaivayil in Tamil. The library, a gateway to knowledge by the Department of Tamil and Culture, Government of Tamil Nadu. He has brought academic and administrative reforms for vibrant administration and rigorous academic initiatives in his academic positions at various levels like Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Registrar, Controller of Examiner, In Charge and Coordinator for the University with potential of excellence, a grant of 40 crores, member syndicate, Senate and Academic Council at higher educational institutions. During his tenure at Periyar University, in addition to creating a corpus fund of 80 crores, he established 5 new departments, 6 research centers, 4 constituent colleges and 3 government colleges. In addition, he has established several cells including All India Civil Service Examination Free Coaching Center, Health Center, Women's Welfare Center, NET-SCT Free Coaching Cell and Internal Quality Assurance Cell for the benefit of students' community. Further, he explored the possibility of establishing Meta University, the concept of benefiting the students and the scholars to utilize the facility from other institutions. During his tenure at Periyar University, more than 22,000 students have been benefited to the Career Counseling and Placement Cell. In the domain of introducing innovative frontier and academic programs and courses, Dr. Muthuchelian is in the forefront in the higher education learning institutions in the state. Indeed, he has a long-term vision for transforming the academic and administrative systems with vision, mode and approach. His work stands as a monument to the individual. Above all, he is a kind person with noble heart, ready to extend his helping hand to the needy at any time. He has earned a lot of encomium from various people, professionals, colleagues, and from the students also. It may not be out of place to mention here that he is the role model for the young scientist who aspires to reach a higher level. I now request Professor Dr. K. Muthuchelian to enlighten us with the knowledge.
Welcome to YouTube channel Make Science Easy with Dr. KMC. Today we are going to see an interesting lecture on biosafety. Biosafety with reference to rules and regulations. If you like this lecture, please subscribe. Come to the lecture today. Biosafety. What do you mean by biosafety? Is as a development and implementation of administrative policies, work practice, facility design and safety equipment to prevent the transmission of biological agents. The biological agents may be the microorganisms to workers, to other persons, to the environment. So this is called as the biosafety. So here it leads to the implementation of the policies which is relevant to how to safeguard the every individual in the earth. Come to the preamble of the biosafety. So traditional laboratory or the conventional laboratory, the biodiversity or biosafety guidelines which emphasized on number one, the optimal work practices, the appropriate containment equipment what we have inside the laboratory, well designed facilities, then administrative control overall the management, then minimizing risk of the unintentional infection or the injury for laboratory workers that may happen accidentally, and then prevent contamination of the outside environment. So hence recently a great concern has increased regarding the possible use of the biological, the chemical and the radioactive materials as terrorism agents. So what is the objective of the biosafety here? Is contribute to ensuring an adequate level of protection in the field. Protection in the field which relevance to what? The safety transfer. The safety in terms of handling and the use of living modified organisms which resulting from the modern biotechnology. So the living modified organisms which related to normally say as the genetically modified the organisms. So biosafety is related to the several in fields starts from the ancient ecology, which is referring to the imported life forms from beyond the ecoregion borders, and the next related field is the agriculture. So here reducing the risk of alien, viral or the transgenic genes or the prions such as the BSE or we call as in code the mad cow, which reducing the risk of food bacterial contamination. Then another field related to this biosafety is the medicine. So the referring to the organs or tissues from biological origin or genetic therapy products which are virus, the levels of lab containment protocols measured as 1, 2, 3 and 4 in rising order of the danger. Then chemistry. So it enters into the chemistry also. For example, the nitrates in water. So which is a very danger to that. So the PCP, that is the pollution control board levels affecting fertility. Then exobiology. So the NASA's policy for containing the alien microbes that may exist on space symbols too. Sometimes it may also called as the biosafety level 5. Then framework. Come to the framework of the biosafety regulations in India. So India's biosafety rules apply to where? Number one, the manufacture sector, the import and storage of the microorganisms from one place to another, and then gene technology products and include products made of almost altogether from the microorganisms that are genetically engineered. That's why I call it as the genetically modified organisms in them. And the rules cover the research and large scale applications of the genetically modified organisms, as I mentioned earlier, GMOs and products. It's a great danger. And they also deal with what? The hazardous organisms that are not genetically modified. So the biosafety rules have been supplemented by the biotechnology safety guidelines. Biotechnology safety guidelines, I mean against this of the modified organisms or the GMOs by the Department of Biotechnology, they call DPT. So what is the legislative framework? There is a legislative framework and operational mechanism for biosafety, and almost it's entered into the three fields. And what safety measures have been taken for the mechanism of the against the biosafety is the agriculture field. So here what we do? So inspection and monitoring of laboratory experiments and field trials and safe handling of the genetically modified materials, either seeds or fruits and etc. and quarantine, extension and training of the farmers. So here a proper training should be given to the farmers and those who are handling all these genetically modified materials, either as seeds or any genetic materials they are using for the propagation. Next to the environment. So again it is a serious framework we have to see in terms of the operational mechanisms for the biosafety is pollen transfer. And pollen transfer from one region to another. And then outcrossing, otherwise called as the hybridization. Then effect on biodiversity, effect on non-target species. So I think this has a lot of the legislative, the framework and operational issues related to the biosafety. Third, the most important was the biotechnology. So gene constructs, the development of the protocols for evaluation of safety and the development of guidelines and training materials. So almost here three areas of the domain are interconnected and we have been called as the requirement in the framework of the operational mechanisms exclusively in the biosafety. And next to that, health and food processing. So here the food safety evaluation, the composition analysis for assessment for the substantial equivalence in the genetically modified the commodities. So I think that will be very serious to look into that in terms of the health and food processing. And then next is the commerce, the monitoring and regulatory the rules in the trade activities. Here the commercial food and then feed and industrial products potentially containing the GM ingredients. Then intellectual property rights and knowledge and patent concerns. So these are all concerned along with the commerce related to the monitoring and the regulatory, the trade. In that we have to take precaution. Then next is the social training. So training and awareness building is very much essential to know the concept or the strategy of the biosafety and other related issues. Here ethical, equity and other socio-economic issues relating to the LMOs, that is living modified organisms. So next to the capacity. So what is the capacity to be enhanced for risk assessment and monitoring? So number one is the operational manuals, which contains a lot of the information that should be supplemented to the the guide scientists in managing the what? The field trials while carrying out all the GMOs or the materials or the genetically modified the materials and training in their implementation also. The next issue is the access. Access to provision of the risk related ecological and environmental information to all the stakeholders. I think it's a duty of the biosafety scientists to give the all information related to the ecological environmental risk related informations. And then training. Training for scientists and research managers in risk evaluation by formations or otherwise the methodology in terms of research in selected institutions, that is must. The development and adaptation of the methodologies for risk evaluation of the living the modified organisms we call as the LMOs. So altogether the training and capacity building for the monitoring of these LMOs after release, property rights and knowledge and patent consent, that is most important in the capacity to be enhanced for the risk assessment and monitoring issues. So what are the various levels of biosafety? So there are different the levels here. We will see one by one. What is the biosafety level 1? So what the safety level which represents a basic level of containment that relies on standard microbiological practices with no special primary or secondary barriers recommended other than a sink for the handling of and the washing. So this is the biosafety level 1, which represents to the how to make use of the standard microbiological practices and what care should be taken for the level 1. And then level 2, we call it the biosafety level 2. Here appropriate when work is done with any human derived blood, body fluids, tissues or the primary human cell lines where the presence of an infections agent may be unknown. So here this biosafety level which normally goes to take care in the field of the laboratories and then hospitals and then to the especially the practicing the medical profession, the doctors, the physicians. And level 3, so the biosafety level 3 which emphasizes mostly on the primary and secondary barriers to protect the personnel in the contiguous areas, the community and the environment from the exposure to the potentially infections aerosols. So here the best example for this biosafety level 3 we have to take care is the all laboratory manipulations should be performed in a enclosed equipment in a confined areas of the equipment such as a gas tight aerosol generation chamber. So I think we have to take care when the scientists are doing the experiments or when you are doing the manipulations with all the what you call the microorganisms. We should take care that all the performance should be within the equipment. And then level 4. So the biosafety level 4 in which the facility itself is generally a separate building or completely isolated zone. Almost it should be in an isolated zone with complex specialized ventilation requirements. In the earlier case, it should be in a containment in an environment from the exposure to the infectious diseases. It should be in a protect personnel. But here, all these should be in a specialized ventilation requirements and waste management system, and to prevent the release of the viable agents and to the environment. I think level 4 which signifies more to the environmental handling. So these 4 biosafety rules are very much essential before handling of the microorganisms or any organ and so on. Then what are the rules? So the biosafety rules to be observed at laboratories. I think many of the youngsters they fail to do the precautions once they enter into the laboratory, whether it is a biological laboratory or chemical laboratory or any other, even the toxicological laboratory. So what should be done for the basic aspects from autoclave? So autoclave research should be done before doing any the type of the equipments and then the parts we are using. So heat resistant autoclave gloves for loading and unloading of the autoclave, that must be kept. And then fluid resistant gloves to eliminate contact with contaminated waste. And then we must all the workers or the scientists or the researchers, once you enter into the laboratory, you must wear the lab coat to protect your apparel. And then the splash goggles. If a splash hazard is present, so we have to wear the goggles, the spectacles. And then minimization of the aerosol formation, prevention of the waste spillage during the autoclave. So I think that we have to take care while loading and unloading, prevention of burns from handling hot contents management, and then following the procedure for the managing the spills. That is most important. So these are very important autoclave procedures for following the ones who are entering into the laboratory for their the experimental works. So with correct method of the waste the packaging, where to package and when to package and how to package. I think this is most important for the biosafety rules. Here the waste should be properly, number one, sterilized, and the waste should be put into the orange polypropylene autoclave bags that are left open during the autoclaving. I think this is most important for every scientist who are working inside the laboratory, especially in the microbiological the laboratories or the biotechnology laboratories. And then here the polypropylene is impervious to steam. If autoclave bags are closed during the sterilization process, the inner temperature of the bag will not be sufficient for decontamination. So this is one of the advantage of the polypropylene autoclave. And then next is the last one. The bags then need to be placed into the shallow, rigid containers to avoid or contain spills. So this is most important for the during the waste packaging of the materials. I think this figure which give you across the section of the proper packing as given, and I think the first figure here you could see that it's a small instrument how to package and labeling the infectious substances, and then they have mentioned the top level with waterproof tape, the culture specimen, and then the specimen ID label which will properly do it, and then absorbent the packing material. So almost everything should be in a contained area. And come to the picture of the B, which is how they are loading into in a pack. So here I think the same one which I have been putting into the what you call it as the label form, and what the label should contain: the name, the address, and the telephone number of the skipper. And then what substance which you have, that you have to mention that this is infectious substance label, it should be marked in the outside. So this is the outer packaging. And then you know that the secondary, after this you have to put it inside, is called the secondary packaging, and then primary package will be of this the real material with absorbent packing material. So all these things finally should keep in, and then a proper cap should be put in on the top, and then should be properly packaged. So this is way by which we have to package all the materials, any types of the organisms, for proper handling of the things in the infectious substances. Then what is the rule to make for the cabinets? We call it as a safety cabinets. The biological safety cabinets, we call the BSC, are among the most effective and most commonly used primary containment devices in the laboratories working with infectious agents. So I think we must be very careful in doing that, especially for the primary the containment devices that should be kept for the the infectious diseases materials. So there are three general types available: class 1, class 2, class 3. So both class 1 and 2, these biological safety cabinets invert phase velocities. So that means 75 to 100 linear feet per minute, and that provide comparable levels of the containment to protect laboratory workers or the scientists who are working in that, and the immediate environment from the infectious aerosol generated within the cabinet. So this is the condition of the class type 1 and 2 of the biological safety cabinets. And cabinet 3, because of the class 3, this offer the minimum, contrary to that, maximum protection to the laboratory personnel, the community and the environment, because all hazardous materials are contained in a totally enclosed ventilated cabinet. The earlier one is in a closed protect of the cabinet, and here in a enclosed ventilated cabinet. So these are the different, and you can see that the class 1 type how it have been, see that in the side view. Again type 2, the biological safety cabinet, the cross view or the side view. And third, the biological safety cabinet, the front view, you can see that number 1, and then the side view. So almost now everything has been built, and then the precaution and tested. It is a proven model. So next, the biodiversity level criteria for vertebrate animals. What we have seen earlier is for the infectious the organisms. Now we are going to see the biosafety level criteria for the vertebrate animals. So the activities of the animals themselves can prevent the new hazards. So the testing animals should not be of contamination for the experiments. So the animals may generate aerosols sometimes. So they may bite, and they may scratch, and they may be infected with zoonotic diseases like the COVID virus. Now we have been talking. So it comes under the zoonotic diseases. So third is the laboratory animal facilities, operational practices, and quality of animal care meet applicable standards and regulations facilitates for the laboratory animals used in the studies. So these are all we should keep in. This is ethic, normal ethic, how to handle the animals, vertebrate animals in the laboratory. Then next is the bacterial agents, the biological agents. The agent may be present in what? The bacterial agent may be present in blood, then skin lesion exudates, and then cerebrospinal fluid, pleural fluid, sputum, and rarely in the urine and feces. So here the direct and indirect contact of the intact and broken skin with cultures and contaminated laboratory surfaces, sometimes accidental, the parental, the inoculation, and rarely sometimes exposure to infectious aerosols are the primary hazards to the laboratory personnel. So this may cause because of the uncaring steps inside the laboratories. The most examples are mentioned here. So Brucella abortus, and the canis, all the militancies, or the Suis. So these are some of the including the Bacillus anthracis, and which are having a serious one in terms of the bacterial agents which causes the infections and maybe later leads to the problem inside the laboratory and be called as the primary hazards to the laboratory personnel. And what should be the precautions taken for the inside the laboratory? So here containment equipment we need to have, and facilities, or the all most are recommended for the activities using the clinical materials and diagnostic quantities of the infectious cultures. So this comes under the fire safety level 2 practices. For studies utilizing experimentally infected laboratory rodents, this will be required for the animal safety level 2. For working, they involving in the production quantities and concentration of cultures and for activities with a high potential of for aerosol production, that comes under the biosafety level 3. So what are the fungal agents? So what are the fungal agents may cause the infections, the infectious diseases? So what precautions we need or the biosafety measures we have to take is the laboratory associated local infections have been reported following accidental the parenteral inoculation with infected disease or cultures containing the yeast forms. So this may be the reason for the one which leads to the problem later. And then pulmonary infections have occurred following the presumed the inhalation of the conidia of the fungal. So we have a lot of the examples are here in the plastomyces, and then the coikidosis, and then the coccus. So these are some of the fungal spores, the fungal agents that cause the problem in the laboratory and then also while handling, even sometimes in the external environment too. So what they recommended precautions against this? So here biosafety level 2 and animal biosafety level 2 practices and facilities are recommended for activities with clinical materials, animal tissues, cultures, environmental samples and infected the animals. The next is the parasitic agents. So here, especially the mosquito, which has a lot of problem and causes transmitting the malarial infection and to the especially for the human. So other potential direct source of the infection for laboratory personnel include contact with lesion material from rodents with cutaneous and then leishmaniasis. So here the plasmodium and then a lot of the other agents also have been says that it can be comes under the parasitic agents. So what the recommended precaution is the biosafety level 2 practices and facilities are recommended especially for the parasitic agents. And again this is very interesting, prions or proteinaceous infections particles that lack nucleic acids. So this is a very serious one. So here the prions are composed largely, if not entirely, of an abnormal isoform of a normal cellular protein. So it is a abnormal cellular protein that may cause a very serious problems. And what mainly in mammals, these are composed of abnormal pathogenetic isoform of the prion protein are available. We call it as designated as the PRPSC. So what recommended precautions to be taken for against the biosafety here? The biosafety level 2 or 3 can be adopted depending on the studies being conducted. So these are the variety of the proteins and which having we call as the prions proteins, which are having a lot of the problems and producing the diseases. And then what are the disease abbreviations they have mentioned here, and then what are the natural host supposed to be carrying the protein, and what are the types of the protein have been involved in that, and what are the pathogenic, the PRP, the isoform. So almost the scientists have worked on that. So mainly the natural host here is the sheep and goats, cats, human, and then cattle. So these are all the agents that carries the materials called the proteins called the prions, and which leads to a lot of the changes in the human body and it forms the diseases. And then rickettsial agents. So highly infectious and remarkably resistant to drying and environmental conditions. So the infections in dose of virulent organism in laboratory animals, which has been calculated to be a small as a single organism. So a broad range of domestic and wild animals are natural hosts for Q fever and may serve and serve as the potential source of the infection for laboratory and animal care personals. So I think very serious one again here. We have to take care against these the rickettsial reagents. So the lot of infectious agents are now rickettsial agents have been mentioned here, and all are, different types have been here. And then what are the recommended precautions for the above? So here biosafety level 2 practices and facilities are recommended for the non-propagative laboratory the procedure, including serological examination and staining of the impression smears. And then biosafety level 3 also will be applicable in this category of this one. And mainly here all recommended activities involving what? Where during the inoculation, incubation and harvesting of the embryonic eggs or cell cultures, or the necropsy of the infected animals and the manipulation of the infected diseases. So these are all one. And then another type we have to think is the viral agents. So the virus, they told viral, the exposure to the rodent excreta, transmitted, or the fresh necropsy material and animal, the bedding are presumed to be associated with risk. It's a great potential risk for that. And then it causes a lot of the problem, infection in the injection, contact of infectious material with mucous membranes or broken skin, and in particular animal bites. So these are very dangerous one, and a lot of the Kentra like viruses, which includes the virus formerly known as the and then hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus formerly known as the non-A and non-B virus, and hepatitis the D virus 2. That's all comes under the viral agents. And what are the precautions here recommended is the biosafety level 2 practice has to be involved, and mainly here in addition to the following recommended precautions, persons working with HIV and SIV or other blood-borne pathogens should consult the OSHA blood-borne the pathogen standard, and that is the OSHA standard should be followed. So altogether the containment facilities and biosafety practices, what should have the basic laboratory? The basic laboratory encompasses all laboratories working with risk group 1 and risk group 2 agents, those that present low or moderate risk to the laboratory worker and low or sometimes limited to risk the community. So what the code of practice to be here is the code is a listening of the most essential laboratory procedures that are basic to safety laboratory practice. So in many laboratories, both in the national laboratory programs, such as a code may be given, the status called the rules within code for laboratory the operations. So what to be done for that, and then what not to be, it's also I will mention here. And what should not be is number 1, mouth pipetting should be prohibited. Eating, drinking, smoking, storing food and applying cosmetics should not be permitted in the laboratory or plant. That is most important. The laboratory should be kept neat, clean and free. Materials not pertinent to the work should be kept away, and then work surface should be decontaminated at least once a day and after any spill of potentially dangerous materials. And then the last is the members of the staff and those who are working in the laboratory should wash their hands after handling infectious materials and animals and when leaving the laboratory. So I think proper sanitizers must use for the laboratory equipments, for the laboratory personnel, and while you are going out from the laboratory. And then all the technical procedures should be performed in a way that it minimizes the creation of the aerosols. That is most important. You should be keep away from the creation of the aerosols inside the laboratory. And all contaminated liquid, the solid material should be decontaminated I mean, before disposal or reuse, we should not throw as such to the dust. I mean, the litter bins. And the laboratory coat, gowns, and uniform should be worn in the laboratory. And then safety glasses, and then face shields or other protective devices should be worn when necessary to protect the eyes and face from the splashes and impacting the objects. So only persons who have been advised of the potential hazards and meet any specific entry requirements. So that means immunization. So immunization should be allowed to enter the laboratory in the working agents areas. And again, there should be an insect and rodent control program we must have in the laboratory or in the working environment. And then animals not involved in the work being performed should not be permitted in the laboratory. The use of the hypothermic needles and syringes should be restricted, and then our gloves should be worn for all the procedures that may involve the accidental direct contact with blood, infectious materials or infected animals. Then next is the all spills, accidents and overt or potential exposure to infectious material should be reported immediately to the laboratory supervisor or the manager. And then baseline serum samples may be collected from and stored for all the laboratory and other at risk personnel. The laboratory supervisor should ensure that training in laboratory safety is provided. Number one, a safety and operation manual that should identifies known and potential hazards and the specific practices and the methodologies to minimize such research should be adopted in the laboratory. So I think the variety and I think there are a lot of the precautions should be adopted within the working environment in the laboratory or in the medical laboratory or in the any other working place. Then next is the laboratory design and facilities. So while designing the laboratory, a special attention should be paid to conditions that are known to pose problems. What are they? This includes creation of aerosols. We have to give special attention. And then work with large volumes and high concentration of microorganisms. Overcrowded, over-equipped the laboratories. Then infestation with rodents and insects and unauthorized entrance. I think we have to take care each and every aspect of that for the entries and then also to the other the materials, biological materials you are using inside the laboratory. So this should be a special attention for all. So the design features for the basic laboratory should be, I think they have mentioned that the laboratory, it should be like this. Ample space must be provided for safety conduct of the laboratory of the manuals. And then walls, ceiling, floors should be smooth, easily cleanable and with also impermeable to the liquids and resistant to the chemicals. And then disinfectants. Then adequate illumination should be ensured for carrying out all activities. And then bench tops, the laboratory furniture, and all should be sturdy and open space, and between and under benches, cabinets, and equipment should be accessible for the easy cleaning. And then the storage space. The storage space must be adequate to hold the supplies for the immediate use and thus prevent the clutter and bench tops and in the aisles. Then wash basins, it should be clean. And then the doors, then autoclave the machine, and then facility. All things should be we have to take care for that. And then next, if there is no mechanical ventilation, windows should be openable, preferable having of the fly proof screens. And then space and facilities should be provided for the safe handling and storage of what? The solvents, radioactive materials and the compressed gases. Then safety system should be cover fire, electrical emergencies, emergency shower and IWAS facilities. So like this every point, almost we have started out nearly some 20 and in 19 points we have given how to make a laboratory and what should be inside and what not should be inside. So laboratories and their animal hosts are occasionally the targets of the vandals. That should also be taken care. So what is the recommended biosafety equipment? So pipetting aids to replace mouth and then available in that. So biological safety cabinets to be used whenever the processes with high potential for creating hazardous aerosols are conducted. And then loop micro incinerators to reduce the aerosol protection. We can keep it, and screw cap tubes and bottles and then autoclaves to sterilize all the contaminated materials. So what is the health and medical surveillance? The objectives of the health and medical surveillance of laboratory personnel are to provide a mean of preventing occupationally acquired disease by the exclusion of the highly susceptible individuals, as well as by regularly reviewing the accepted for the employment, and then to provide a means for the early detection of the laboratory acquired infection we must have, and to access the efficiency of the protecting equipment and procedures to be followed. So all these things should be taken care, and in addition to that, handling, transfer and shipment of the specimens we have to take very care. Altogether we have to taken care while handling, and then specimen containers, transport, reception specimen, opening of the package, and then shipment by mail or air freight or any other common carrier, and then packaging the requirements. I think this also we have to take care of. So what to be taken for the emergency? So the emergency should be planned, should be provided for what the breakage and spillage we must have. Then accidental injection, cuts and the abrasions. Then accidental injection of the potentially hazardous materials. A potentially hazardous aerosol release in sudden. And then the breakage of tubes in and the centrifuges, not having safety, cups, fire, flood, natural disaster, the vandalism, the emergency services, whom to contact, and emergency equipment and its location. I think every laboratory should have all these precautions one, and these are all that we have to take care before setting the laboratory, or even after setting the laboratory, what to be done inside of the safety, the measures, and what are the various committees. What are the committees entrusted with implementation of the biosafety rules? Is the recommendation by the Government of India. Number one is the Recombinant DNA Advisory Committee. We call it as RDAC. So what it functions? So it will review the developments in biotechnology at national and international levels, and then recommend suitable and appropriate safety regulations for India in rDNA research, use and applications. So this is the role or the functions of the Recombinant DNA Advisory Committee. And next is the Review Committee on Genetic Manipulation. We call it as the RCGM, mainly to note and to approve the rDNA work. It's the ribosomal, the DNA work, and to ensure the adherence of rDNA safety guidelines of the government, and then the last is to prepare the emergency plan according to the guidelines. And similarly, it will recommend about the category of the risk 3 or above the experiments, and to seek the RCGM's approval we have to get, and to inform DLC and SPCC as well as GAAC about the experiments where we needed or to be conducted. They act as a nodal point for interaction with the statutory the bodies by the Government of India to ensure the experimentation and designated location taking into the account of the approved the protocols. So these are the committees, and in addition to that we have the Institutional Biosafety Committee. So to bring out the manuals of the guidelines specifying the 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 producers for the regulatory process on the GMOs in research or genetically modified organisms in research, use and applications, including industry, with a view to ensure environmental safety. So that was the purpose and the objective of the Institutional Biosafety Committee working in India. So what will do, it will review all ongoing rDNA projects involving high risk category and controlled field experiments. And then also it will lay down the procedures for the restriction of the prohibition, production, sale, import and use of the genetically modified organisms, and then to generate relevant data on transgenic material in the appropriate system, to undertake visits and off-sites of the experimental facilities periodically where the projects with the hazardous materials or the biohazardous materials are being pursued, and also at a time prior to the commencement of the activity, and altogether to ensure that the adequate safety measures are taken or not as per the guidelines. So this is the committee duty. And the next is the Genetic Engineering Approval Committee. So GEAC, and the main purpose of this committee is to permit the use of GMOs and products thereof for commercial applications, to adopt producers for restriction and prohibition, production, sale, import, use of the GMOs, both for research and application under the EPA, and this will authorize large-scale protection release of GMOs and products that off into the environment, provided prior permission from the Government of India and authority, and also to authorize agencies or persons to have the powers to take the punitive actions under the Environment Protection Act. So the law is very strict here before releasing of any material related to the genetically modified in the environment or to the nature. So in realizing to that, State Biotechnology Coordination Committee also have been set up, and it has the powers to inspect, investigate and to take punitive action in case of violations of the statutory provisions through the State Pollution Control Board or the Directorate of Healthcare, etc. And main function is to review periodically the safety and control measures in the various institutions handling the GMOs. I think it's very serious now. I think the present government is also taking and being very seriously for handling the GMOs in the laboratories. And then to act as a nodal agency at state level to assess the damage, if any, due to the release of the GMOs, and to take on-site of the control the measures. So in addition to that, we have the district level committee also, we call it as a DLC, and main function is to monitor the biosafety regulations in the inside the district level, and again it acts as a nodal agency in the district level to assess the damage, if any, due to release of the GMO, and to take on-site control measures. So in addition, we have also the monitoring and evaluation committee, and the main purpose is to undertake the field visits at the experimental site approved by the RCCM for the purpose of collecting scientific information on the comparative agronomic advantage of the transgenic plants, especially in the agricultural field. And mainly they will suggest the experimental design and also to assist in collecting and consolidating the data for evaluating the environmental risk emanating from the transgenic plants in the agriculture field and so on. So with this, the biosafety rules and regulations are enforced in India very strictly. In addition, we have the Biodiversity Authority also. The Biodiversity Authority, we call it National Biodiversity Authority of India, situated in Chennai, and there also the lot of the regulatory mechanisms are available against the use of the materials, whether it is the GMOs or any other materials, and then either for our own use and then also to exporting to the other countries of any samples that also have been taken very serious view, and unless otherwise the prior permission from the National Biodiversity Authority, we cannot send any biological materials to outside for even for the identification because of the patenting and IPR issues in the Indian context of our own plant genetic resources. So with this, I conclude my talk. Thank you one and all for the patient hearing. If you like these lectures, it's a very important lecture of the current the scenario called biosafety. What are the rules and regulations? And please subscribe it. Thank you one and all.